It's another Manly Monday. Forgive the shadows on the microphone. I'm going for audio overlighting. When I get the mic working, then I'll fix the audio. There, that's more centered. But you see this big black. Anyway, it it was a weekend. The Discord chatters got all the House of the Dragon style drama that is going on. It's not drama, it's real shit. My father-in-law died and it's been a shit show. But I'm not going to talk about that today because I have to just get through that, and I'll talk about it maybe on when I have made sense of it. This is my way. And I had already planned to talk about this topic. So let's do the help support this channel, and then get into it because it's actually something that I think is useful and good. And yeah, onward. Yeah, my father-in-law was not somebody who wanted a big fuss. More on that later. And we've got a special thing coming up next week, but this doesn't feel like the right time to talk about it. I've already been talking for a minute. So help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK, or the GoFundMe for our men's groups and the Discord and all that good stuff that is turning into like activities and events and everything like that. And it's pretty cool. So I am talking today about something inspired by Alan Wake 2. There's a line that is deliberately a red flag that Alan says in one of his writing on the typewriter, being deliberately cheesy, right, moments. And he says, Alice kept me stable. Alice being his wife that disappeared in the first game, and we spent 13 years wondering what the hell happened to her. And that, I want to talk about why it's a red flag, because that kind of relationship has been romanticized. It was something at one point, you know, I wanted somebody to be my rock and to be that for me. And I realized why it's a terrible idea that isn't good for anybody. Three main reasons that I'm going to get into. One, if your partner is keeping you stable, it means you're not stable. True stability cannot be external. It can't come from another person. It has to come inward. You can't be using crutches. You can't be, relying on the other person to talk you down. It has to come from within. It's such when you think about it that way, it's such an inherently absurd concept that you wonder why we've romanticized the trope of, she keeps me going, she's my rock, all that stuff. It's great to have somebody who is good at emotionally supporting you. More on that in the next point, but it's great when you have it. It shouldn't only be one source, and having a supportive social environment is essential, absolutely. But it doesn't replace actual stability, actual emotional regulation. That is you work. That is me work. I am responsible for me. And the boundaries are, only you can enforce your boundaries. And if you're relying on someone else for that, this is where we get into the other 2 points, right? That's just sort of the main, this is why it's inherently a problem. The other 2 points are sort of consequentialist outcroppings of the first one, that if your partner's keeping you stable, you're not stable. And that is a deliberate choice in Alan Wake 2. So, mwah to Remedy for including that. Because, damn, the more I play that game, the more I love what they're doing, even though, the first 10 hours drove me crazy. And again, I think that's deliberate, but I don't want to spoil the game. I'm playing it on Twitch. The second part, if your saying if your relationship is defined by the belief that your partner keeps you stable, your partner is not getting their emotional needs met in the relationship. It's too one-sided. And that can be okay in the short term. We all have periods. Trust me with what I'm going through right now. But see, I recognize it's not about me. Father-in-law, meaning there's people involved who are closer to him. It's not about me. So yes, I am being stability right now, short term. It doesn't define the relationship, right? If the relationship is defined by she or he is keeping you stable, I can finally not be heteronormative on this one. What happens in those relationships is that, and this is not anyone's fault. I don't want anybody to feel like they did something wrong by having a relationship like this. It takes two people here. It's never all one person's fault, unless there's violence, but that'll be point 3. This is when it's, a non-abusive relationship. Some people who like that feeling that they are essential, it starts being much less fun when those emotional needs, the gap between needs and needs met gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. That person starts putting on a front, and they're not honest about how they feel. They never may have been in the first place. The reason they seem so strong is they weren't being honest. And so gradually that person drifts away, shuts down, and the relationship usually ends from the point of view of the person who thought, they had this great partner who kept them stable. What usually ends up happening is they're just gone one day. And it seems very sudden, and you don't know why, and you never get a satisfactory answer. And I'm not spoiling the game here. I'm using it as a, guys like Alan Wake, who, the first game was clearly a metaphor. The whole thing of the dark place is he's been in a prolonged, profound depression. And I work with quite a few guys who had a relationship like this just end one day, and they are still struggling to figure out why. And I'm not saying that this is absolutely the reason. God, I do not control their story. But it is one reason. And that does not mean it is the mentally ill person's fault. I want to reiterate, it is not your fault if this is feeling familiar to you. Because same rules apply to the other person. You're responsible for you. They're responsible for them. If they're keeping things from you because they don't think you can handle it, that's not respecting you. They made their choices. And I guarantee you, in every situation that I have worked with people in, they would have preferred to have known. So if you're watching this and you're one of those people who thinks you have to be somebody's rock and, be altruistic and be giving and set aside your own needs, only in the short term. Only in the short term. It will not work long term. And again, that is on, that suggests the other partner isn't as stable as they come across either. And, I am, this is the reason I hesitated making this video for a while. I wanted to be very, very careful and took notes. Because I want it to be very clear. If this is sounding like you are not to blame. It is not your fault. The other person probably wasn't as stable as you were led to believe. They probably weren't as stable as they thought they were. And And, in this thing of, well, I ended up the asshole and I have no idea why. A lot of that is because the person is taught to be a people pleaser. And, with mentally ill people tiptoe around them, and it's the wrong thing to do. Because then it's, oh, I can't, he won't be able to handle it. And then the resentment grows and the resentment grows and the resentment grows. And when it's a romantic relationship, they meet somebody else, they find somebody else, and they're gone. Or they find a way to change locations and they're gone. And they might not even be aware it's, their own unmet emotional needs driving them. But that, I've just seen it so many times. Both parties need to feel valued and supported. It can't be one way. And it's not 50-50 all the time. Sometimes it's 80-20, sometimes it's 20-80, sometimes you both only have 20-20. Brene Brown, Brene Brown? Yeah, I think that's her name. The Shame Lady talks about the fact that, her and her husband say at tough times, they say what percentage they have. And if they both are only at 20%, they don't try to work out anything difficult at that point. They just get through it until somebody gets an energy top up. And that's a very important thing to understand about relationships, because there's a flip side to that number 2 of, the partner taking on too much, not getting their emotional needs met. This idea that you need your partner to keep you stable makes you vulnerable to abuse. It does. We're seeing the flip of, the stuff that was dealt with in the 60s and 70s of, oh, the woman's just hysterical, she doesn't know what she's doing, right? You saw, if you followed the whole Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing at all, you saw Johnny Depp say that about Amber Heard, right? You saw that. There's text messages to her parents. And, well, we saw what happened. One of the absolute worst things, giving both of them the benefit of the doubt. This is an exercise. The idea that your partner is your detox nurse or your psychiatric nurse, that's a terrible idea. There are boundaries. There is a distance in that role. Part of the reason that I started doing the work I did is a lot of people just need somebody to talk to. They just need a sounding board. They don't need therapy, or they need somebody to work with more frequently than therapy because of this. Your partner is not your nurse. Your partner is not your therapist. Your partner is your partner. And it goes back to that give and take of emotional needs. And interestingly, I see a lot of people in nursing who, they have these caregiver personalities, and they do get really pushed around by a lot of people. Accordingly, they are very good at absorbing a lot, and it doesn't stop when they get home. And so they feel like they're the unstable one, they're the mentally ill one. And what it really is there's nothing wrong with the way their brain is working. The boundaries aren't there. If a person has convinced you that you are so sick that you need them, that could be a marker of abuse. In a good relationship, in a healthy relationship, somebody going, I think you need some help. That's one thing, but that's not that person taking responsibility for your stability. That's a person going, I can't do this. We need some support here. If somebody is constantly hammering in that you are the problem, that you are unhinged, that it is so difficult, that they should get a medal, they should get nominated for martyrdom because dealing with you is so hard, they're choosing to stay. And sometimes that can be a form of emotional abuse through gaslighting. Hence, it not just be, and this is why I don't want anybody to feel guilty if they feel like this video is, if they see themselves in this video. Because this is learned behavior. This is something that's been romanticized. And this may have been a dynamic of a failed relationship in the past. And if that's so, good news, there's not something so defective in you that you can't have a healthy relationship. Having a healthy relationship, maintaining a healthy relationship is a learned skill that when it works, is modeled in the home. Mom and dad love each other and they're mature adults and you see how they work things out. Or you've got other role models to teach you how to work things out. The media is fucking terrible for this. The nerd media is worse than usual, except for Superman and Lois. That show is awesome regarding a functional, working, healthy couple. God, that show, bless it. But, they keep, splitting up Peter Parker and MJ. And it's all the drama, and it's just the cycles. They don't ever really write them totally stable, and they've made that a choice. I don't agree with it. I do think that written properly, Peter and Mary Jane could be a very interesting example of two people who want a lot out of life that can hand off. That would be, first of all, a news story, an original story, but also it would be something that actually helped, a readership that does struggle with social skills and doesn't have a lot of experience with boyfriend-girlfriend stuff or boyfriend-boyfriend stuff, girlfriend-girlfriend stuff. It's always very salacious, and it doesn't have to be. You can make exciting stories about functional couples, because let me tell you, life is hard. But that's the three main reasons why you shouldn't have a partner that keeps you stable. You shouldn't look for a partner that keeps you stable. And good on Remedy for putting that in a, highly, highly artsified game, a serious, mature game. It actually feels like adults are writing an incredibly dysfunctional person instead of people who are trying to justify their dysfunction by making it glamorous and noble. And let me tell you, after the glut of smart games that I'm just like, this is psychologically terrible. Alan Wake 2 is, yes, it's a horror game. Yes, it's highly, highly fictional. But so far, I haven't come across anything that isn't completely responsible. And if I could hug them, I would. Not that they need me to. They're very stable. Or maybe they're not and they're aware of it and they know that they have to do the work. Nobody else can do that work for you. And beware of anyone who claims to want to. Because they're either a people pleaser, which is not good for either of you, because people pleasers don't do it just because they like helping people. They do it because they're trying to get something. If I'm useful, you won't leave kind of thing. That when you get two people with holes that never fill, the holes get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then the other person becomes the reason for the hole eventually. But the thing is, that hole predated them. It can't possibly be their fault. So, and that hole, again, because it's replicating patterns, can make you vulnerable to abuse. Now, the good thing is, internal stability is possible, and it doesn't mean you have to be alone. It doesn't mean you have to become a monk. And it means the opposite of forming really deep connections with people. In inner stability, real stability makes you able to have those intense emotional experiences and not topple over, not relapse into addiction, not feel like your life is ending, or like you want to end your life when something doesn't go your way. It's actually better. You can actually go deeper in terms of knowing people and supporting each other and really being there for each other when everyone involved is relatively stable, or if they are unstable, it is a temporary state. And this doesn't mean that if you have depression, you can't be stable. If you have anxiety, you can't be stable. If you have PTS like me, you can't be stable. That's a video coming later in the week. That's going to be an interesting one if I can manage. I am going very easy on myself this week because I'm doing the work to keep me stable because it's my job. And if I slip, I have to get back on the horse. It's nobody's responsibility but mine. And it is better. You feel more in control. You feel like an adult. Imposter syndrome goes bye-bye. Seriously, that was not something I expected, but holy shit, it's real. And of course, Alan's got a raging case of imposter syndrome. But yeah, it is possible. You don't have to be cured to be stable. It's just, you have a basement that doesn't flood. It doesn't mean you're never depressed. It doesn't mean you never feel anxious. It doesn't mean you're never symptomatic. And this is even true of people with personality disorders. You always have to be aware that this is the way your brain works. But you can achieve stability. And then when you feel it start slipping, you know how to get back to stable. You know how to get back to shore. And you don't end up in it's not a lake, it's an ocean territory. Alan Waite quote. Okay, hope you enjoyed this video. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, so you can work on stuff like this. People need it. Coffee.com/LeannaK, or the men's groups, the Discord, the GoFundMe. Going to be revamped, but the nice thing about GoFundMe is the minute you give the money, it gets to the cause. So this is what, allows us to pay for various it's amazing how the little charges add up. But anyway, thanks for watching Manly Mondays.